everyone. As promised, Tarana and I are here with you again with a very respected guest, an external expert in the field of ELT, Ms. Raj Lakshmi Murthy. Let me introduce her properly to you all. She's been a mentor to me for many years now. That's her first introduction I would give. And she used to be an English teacher, and she taught middle school and high school students for more than 20 years in Zambia as well as Botswana. And the courses she taught was Cambridge level courses there. Apart from that, she's been an examiner, a business English coach, and examiner with British Council as well as IDP. She has given important contribution to assessment and observation and analysis of many course books as well. So all in all, she is a treasure of information as far as English language teaching is concerned. And through her years of experience, she has amassed a lot of experiential knowledge, which should be very much useful to all of us. So with this introduction, let me share a little secret here. Whenever I thought of Raj, hi Raj, whenever I think of you, I always have many questions, as you know. I always, whenever I am in a crux, I always go to her and ask questions. So I was thinking which topic to choose to discuss when Raj is with us. And then I just went back to all the conversations I had with you all at Nubra and Khalsi during the lunch break, during tea breaks. And your question was how to make our learners use English in the classroom and, of course, out of the classroom. How can we make them more proficient or capable in using English? So I thought, let me talk to you, Raj, how exactly all the teachers, all of us should work towards making this non-native speakers, as all of us are non-native speakers, become more capable and excellent in the spoken English prowess. So that would be the goal of our today's discussion. Over to you, Tarana.
Nipa, could you please adjust your camera just so that we have it steady? Yeah, much better.
Okay.
Thank you, Nipa, and a very hearty welcome, Raj Lakshmi ji. It's a pleasure to meet you today, and it's a very appropriate topic, very important topic, because this is the one after achieving skills for teaching various areas of English as a second language. The next challenge or question that always comes into even an experienced teacher's mind is really engaging the students on an ongoing basis. In other words, promoting English language usage in the classroom in the most authentic, in the most realistic way, so that when students leave the classroom, they feel confident and equipped to deal with everyday conversations in various aspects of life, whether it's formal, informal, business, personal, and so on. So how teachers create practice occasions and promote the usage of authentic English in the classroom prepares the student for the real world. And it's undeniably important to do that regardless of which age group your students are in. And we're incrementally preparing them to develop their English in such a way that they progress to higher education and also beyond for their jobs. So I want to quickly, before I invite you to speak on a few important aspects of how to promote English in the classroom, just to quickly share the goals of this session. The first goal that we collectively identified was that we want to discuss the strategies to promote English in the classroom so that teachers can create many opportunities in the classroom for using English authentically and thus prepare them to engage successfully in the world outside, them as in the students.
Correct.
And the second goal we discussed for this session was to explore ways that can move classroom teaching beyond the textbook without disrupting the syllabus? Because, of course, our syllabus is our responsibility, and we want to incorporate authentic and real world language usage while completing the syllabus. They go together, they are not separate.
Of course, yes.
So my first question, or say the first area that we want to explore through your eyes, Rajlakshmi ji, is how do we see English as a global language? How do we identify with English in various contexts or various situations? If you could comment on that.
See, when you talk about the relevance and the usage of the English language, straight away it comes to my mind that, why are students learning English? Why do they want to learn English? Right. So, I mean, I had a student some time back, and totally from a Gujarati medium school, and no word of English. And mind you, he was doing instrumentation engineering at Nirma University here in Ahmedabad. And he came to me and he said, "No English, madam. I want to learn English." So there comes the thing, like it has to come from the student, the willingness, the feel and the wanting to learn English. And then, when we walk into the classroom, we can, hey, why do you want to learn English? You tell me, and they might just stare at you. Well, you want a job. You want to go to or you want to go overseas. You want to, study in a foreign university, or even in India, within India, if you want to go to the, higher these things of learning, then you need that English, because that has become the means of communication anywhere you go. You take any industry, even from now especially with the mobile phones and things like that, even at the grassroots level, you can see people, who are working as house helps, working with these phones, and they are able to, use it. But again, if there is somebody at the other end not knowing the native language and is, trying to type the thing in the local language, but with the English, in English, there comes the confusion, there comes the, the need, the necessity. So, it's actually like telling the students the need, and they're, putting in their effort, and they're wanting really to learn the language. Now, see, time and again, we have discussed the need to communicate in English in the classroom. We have always done that as teachers. And we, of course, needless to say, like we have to, we are implementing the various ways, either showing them videos or having a talk in the classroom or making them read. And we pay attention to all the 4 skills, the reading, writing, listening, and of course, all the 4 skills are needed within the classroom. But how do we approach these various skills? This textbook thing of learning a language becomes very boring for children sometimes. So the only way is to make it some sort of a pleasure, some sort of an entertainment in the classroom. Of course, yes. I mean, like, you cannot sort of put the syllabus aspect aside. You definitely have to consider that and keep that in your mind and move so that, class by class, you are edging towards completion of the required syllabus. But at the same time, give about 15-20 minutes or 15 minutes in each lesson for an activity that they will engage in. Now, what could those activities be? That is the question. What are? So we can show them videos. Now, just showing them the videos, is that enough? They will watch. Fine, go out of the classroom, and they might even discuss about that, but in their native language. They're not going to talk about it in English. So
true, yes.
So there you are, you throw questions, or you give them a little, a worksheet to follow up, which they can perhaps do at home, or even as in pairs or in groups in the classroom. So that kind of an activity, I think, will go a long way. That is engaging them to do something that they are interested.
Yes. And also,
Excellent
I think,
and very, yes.
yeah, just
Excellent
quickly,
and
Nipa, over to
interesting
you.
point. Yeah. The points you made, Raj, are I so relate to them. Number one, the first thing was that you need to find the purpose for which purpose the student is in your class. However, for all the school teachers sitting there could be just one purpose for them to learn English as a foreign language, and for them mainly to pass that tests. Yes, but apart from that, as teachers, can we provide them some extended or some other purpose other than just passing this test of English as a subject? Yes, we can show them a window through which they can have a better, bigger view of the world, and they can think about what kind of use they can put their knowledge of language once they go out of the classroom. That's one thing. So yes, clarifying the purpose and searching the purpose is one. Right, Tarana? What would you say about it?
Absolutely. And, at the end of the day, while we're talking about why English, particularly in this point that we're trying to explore, it's about thinking of English as the lingua franca. It is a global language. We can't deny it. And each one of us not only in our teaching careers, but in the way we move about in our research or presenting the information that the experience that we have in our classrooms, professional development, all these things require English. So our children, as they grow, they will notice, what's the first thing they're going to use their English for, which is outside the classroom. It's playing a video game. We can't deny that. And they're entering that global village through the digital medium out into the world, in the virtual world. So we use it in one way, they are going to use it in another way. So while we think of English as a global language, it's important to also keep in mind the depth and the breadth of what English is evolving as a lingua franca, as a global language into, and what our children's future will be for the application of English. And so starting with videos and visual games and activities, we must also keep that in mind, that choosing from maybe Disney characters or our Indian cartoon figures, to all the way to looking at the younger influencers who are out there inspiring the young generation and bringing those ideas into the classroom, right? So that's my view of it. The second thing that the second point that we discussed while talking about promoting English in the classroom is the English teacher herself or himself as a speaker of English. So Rajashmi ji, could you please comment on that?
Yes.
What are the communication challenges and the reflective
that is a very, very important point, because it's but natural that when you are with the native speakers and you yourself let's take the example of Ladakh itself. So the teacher is from Ladakh, the children are from Ladakh, so naturally it's a very natural thing to talk in their own language. They will just switch over as and when. But that is the point that the teacher has to firmly keep in mind, that I don't know any other language except English to communicate with the children, So that is the only way. If the teacher switches, then, that is an excuse for the children. They will find a way, and you'll be surprised. I mean, like, teachers do that, and it is natural, as I say. We cannot help it. But then, that's why the teacher plays such a significant role in developing that confidence in the teachers, in the children, by showing confidence in themselves.
Yes.
Very nice point indeed. And another thing, as a teacher or as English teachers, all of us have to remember is we are like a work in progress. We are eternal learners. So apart from our syllabus or the textbooks or the course books or the reference books, unless we become, habituated to reading extensively and immersing ourselves in the language, we cannot promote the same thing to our children or to our students. So, one thing as English speakers or as teachers, we all have to remember is we have extra responsibility. Everybody speaks English, though none of them are native. But for us, we carry some extra responsibilities because our students are going to mimic us one way or the other. Be it pronunciation, be it selection of the words or choice of the phrases or the nuances or the tone, you name it, they are going to mimic us.
Yes.
Right? Because I still remember the way my CELTA tutor, used to say good morning. And sometimes at the end of the day, when I think back, I say, oh, I'm actually replicating her tone when I say good morning to my students, right? So
Absolutely.
this comes so naturally, for students. So as teachers, we have to be very, very careful how we actually envisage English and how we deal with it as speakers, not just as teachers.
Yes.
So role of teachers as in improving and refining their own speaking prowess is, I think, quite crucial. What do you say, Tarana?
Yeah, and this point particularly reminds me of an author I've read and researched and quoted many times, M.A.K. Holiday. He talks about linguistic competence, and what that means is your ability, your command over the language in layman's terms, right? And this command means the need to make meaning. It also means, what do we mean by command? It means that I have a need to understand and to make others understand and to be understood, right? And that comes only with self-practice, like my practice as an English speaker and a thinker in English. So once I understand how meaning is made in my second language, which is English, and I continue using it diligently as the only language I have while I'm in my English language classroom, like Rajashmi ji said. The idea is to grow into that awareness and the command of making meaning in the language for yourself and inviting your students to make meaning. And what does that mean? That means really creating a world of English in the classroom. Yes, so becoming a lifelong learner for yourself. To build your English language skills, your own language skills, through reading, through keeping vocabulary logs for yourself or whatever your style and method is. But also to understand the idiomatic nuances of English, how to paraphrase. And these are skills, believe it or not, even as near native speakers or somebody who's born and lived in an English speaking country, I'm always checking myself on it. When I write emails, or when I see a beautiful paraphrasing by somebody else, I note that like, oh, this is a great way of doing it, right? So having that lifelong learner in you, always awake and energized by different things.
And one more little thing I would like to add here as a teacher, that all of us should remember that having an excellent command over English does not mean to know the most difficult words and phrases by heart.
Absolutely.
It means to be able to communicate in a meaningful and purposeful way so that your listener understands you perfectly well without any miscommunication, number one. And number two, in the classroom, when you are showing or you are modeling the language, do remember to grade your language according to your learners, right? If you are teaching a standard fifth class and you start talking in a very advanced English, it's going to go above them, right? And although you might pass as one of the most, impressive speakers, your students may not, give you that higher score because they haven't been able to understood you, right?
See, that's
so
the
then
thing. That
again,
confidence, they will become scared.
Exactly. And then you are not a good communicator at all.
Yeah.
So communication should be at the heart of whatever kind or whatever level of language you use. And before selecting the level of your language, you have to look and assess your listeners. Right?
So I think here, a little bit of, gesture, maybe gestures along with, simple language, especially at the start, the primary levels. That goes a long way. And as you go along, you're not only a teacher in the classroom, you're playing a much, much bigger role there. And therefore, along with, like soft skills, you sort of introduce the words that are necessary, the please and the thank yous, and so because that is so much a part of the language.
Yes,
very true.
Which comes with your own practice, right?
So as academicians or as teachers, we need to teach them at least two kinds of language. One is that of academic context or purpose, and one is that of social purpose or social context. Both of these languages or both of these styles differ greatly. All of us know that. So it's essential for us to introduce our learners to both these styles. However, since we are dealing only till high school, I would not mention another style, that is when you help them learn English in a professional context. Here it's irrelevant, so we'll not discuss that. But that again is another style which students need to be introduced to. So as I said earlier, as educators, we have double the responsibility than any other normal English speaker. I hope both of my colleagues would agree with me.
Yeah, absolutely. Sure. And I feel that, see, when you're teaching children, say from first standard to 7th or 6th or 7th standard, we are still not distinguishing very clearly between formal and informal or professional or social, because you're working with children. And there it is going to be, like Rajashmiji you mentioned, it's going to be engaging and fun and that element of joy to create the intrinsic motivation, because at that point they are not selecting, we are selecting for them. Right? We have to cover the syllabus for them. We have to teach them. So it's our responsibility to make that classroom a lot of fun and have a lot of engaging activities. From 8th standard to 10th is when you start showing them these distinctions of formality, of purpose, of discourse types, of even the types of English around the world, British, US, and also making them independent users of the type they like to connect themselves with. And the youth today generally gravitates towards US English, again, because the gaming industry and the media industry uses more American English. And that's fine, so the difference between my bad and sorry, or the difference between
thank you and cheers.
Yes, thank you and cheers. Those things can be discussed, but it is not something that you have to break down. Let the students tell them that they are free to select.
Yes,
they want to use.
It must be a natural way of, that's where you get into the natural process of teaching.
Yes, and showing them just the variety, showing them the way, and saying now your fluency can develop, but you choose what you want to say, and they're both correct forms.
I think, if it is possible, if it is, if it is practical, especially in Ladakh, etc., if there are English medium schools, there could be some interaction between the students of those schools, with one another, be it in sports or whatever. And I'm sure this is happening. This is happening, except that, in the playground or, while engaging themselves in sports or other activities, they, of course, jump to their native language again. They start speaking Ladakhi. But, that there again, a gentle pat on the back, come on, a little smile from the teacher. That goes a long way, a long way. They will remember you.
Exactly. We were talking about this, Nipa, right? In the formative years, I don't remember my college teachers as well as I remember my school teachers. And that's a given.
Definitely. And now coming back to another question, Raj, the core speaking skills, as we mentioned, grammar, vocabulary, fluency, right? All these core speaking skills, and of course, pronunciations. I think every teacher here in our group, Nubra and Khalsa group at Ladakh, wants to know more from you that what should they do to promote these core speaking skills in the classroom so that students become more capable when they go out of the classroom and can relate their learning of the classroom to the real world. So how should they promote, in what way should they promote these core speaking skills?
See, this core speaking skills, again, it is just by engaging in activities, as I said earlier, and those activities, they have to be like constructive, as at the same time, they should have fun. And there are many such activities they can do, a little walk, maybe in the garden, or just going to the zoo, maybe, and just talking, pointing out, asking questions there, and trying to elicit answers from them in English. If they switch over, just a little nod, a little smile in English, please.
Right.
And then with a little smile, and they will switch. They will, automatically. And finally, it will become a habit. It's a question of forming that habit.
And forming habit is absolutely essential, I think.
Absolutely,
yes.
Absolutely.
We talked about the teacher as a language ambassador. So what we are mentioning here is that the teacher has to we are the ambassadors of what happens in our classroom. If you're teaching history, we are historians. If you're teaching maths, we're mathematicians. Similarly, if you're teaching English, we're English ambassadors, which means, as you said, nudging the students and creating patterns so that it becomes second nature, it becomes natural, right? So it's like,
and initially to promote these patterns, we should not expect that our students, I'm talking about students between 10 to 12, 13 years, that they would have adequate vocabulary. So provide a lot of scaffolding. Create classroom routines and put them on the posters, on the bulletin, on the whiteboard to help them along, so that they end up developing and actually concretizing this vocabulary, and so that slowly but surely their fluency increases. So I think promoting speaking in the classroom requires a lot of planning, patience, and hard work on teachers' part first. Then comes students' role. So you really have to meticulously plan those what kind of posters or vocabulary or the kind of sentence structures you want them to learn. Do you want them to learn how to agree and disagree language? Do you want them to learn how to suggest or advise language? Do you want them to learn how to give instructions to find a place, or how to dictate a recipe, or how to describe a game or describe a picture? What kind of sentence structures you want them to learn? Your task, your fun and engaging activities, all should encompass this and more, especially scaffolding. What do you say about that, Raj?
Absolutely. You see, now, for example, we take a simple lesson in grammar. If you were to take a lesson in grammar and you want to teach them, let's say, connectives, and, because, and connecting up sentences. So you just write a simple sentence on the board. For example, I went to school with a bag. I went to the school with a bag and had a cake in it. Now someone else adds to it, and a little paragraph forms. And there, see, because otherwise grammar becomes very boring and it will not register in their minds. So it has to be in a very, very practical way, Or, you want to teach them pronouns, Take John and Mary in every sentence. And then you sort of don't tell them that I'm going to teach you pronouns today. What is a pronoun? A pronoun is a verb. No. You just write up these sentences and then you change those words. Instead of saying, John and Mary, you put they. Or you say that, she put she in place of Mary, if you have a sentence like that. And then you say, do you see a difference there? Ask them. They will realize that there. So what are these? These are the pronouns.
So learning by discovery.
Yeah.
Discovery. Yes.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's really very grammar can be very boring otherwise for the children, and they will not learn it that way. Though I mean, way back when I think of our school days, we were taught very rigidly. This is we are going to do direct, indirect speech or this or that, and we were told this, but that's no longer the case. Children need to you need to create. You need to bring it about from them, elicit from them, instead of just telling them this is this.
Yeah. And for this one, Nipa, I think there was a point you had raised in our conversation about reading and the importance of extensive reading as well. So if you both could comment on that, and why, for example, the 7th grade book, chapter 8, Kalpana Chawla, what could you do with something like that? And promote extensive reading. So maybe we'll start with Raj Lakshmi ji, just the relevance and the importance of reading and extensive reading, and then Nipa connecting it with the textbooks that you talked about during RTT training.
Well, when it comes to reading, I found it really interesting to note how we can, create their interest. Number 1, increase their vocabulary. Number 2, number 3, the pronunciation, the intonation, and everything. Everything comes from reading. So let them read out aloud, in the classroom, and record it. Let them listen to it again and see for them and hear for themselves. Is there something wrong? Is it very flat? Should it be this way? Or you can read the passage out again and put in the necessary intonation and other things, the pronunciation the correct way. If there have been errors, just very subtly sort of stress on that, and this is the way to pronounce this, and then let them hear. And then sometimes drilling also helps in a way. So some words, it is so like language connected that it's very difficult. S and sh can still be an S. So you have to have a drilling exercise. I found that very interesting and also productive.
Excellent. So talking about extensive reading, Tarana and Raj, what I feel is it is essential for all the children or all the students to be attracted towards books other than the textbooks. If they really want to get better at not just speaking, but even writing. Extensive reading, that's the input we give through reading and listening. And this could be encouraged by teacher. I'll give you an example of Standard 6, Chapter 8, Kalpana Chawla. There is a chapter in Standard 6 of English language textbook, CBSE, which all of them are teaching right now. So that it starts with a very short news item, and then there is an extremely brief biography of Kalpana Chawla with a picture of Kalpana Chawla in an astronaut uniform and a picture of a spacecraft. That's the only thing. It's just a 3-page long chapter, and very scanty information is given about Kalpana Chawla's life and how she came to be an astronaut. Right? Yeah. So as a teacher, what all of us could do, I'm sure all the teachers who would listen to this, for them this is not new, because when we discussed this chapter and we created activities, we have discussed this. You can ask your students to compile articles related to life of Kalpana Chawla from internet. Number 1. Number 2, you could distribute books which really mention Kalpana Chawla and her life among your students and ask them to read in groups together, chapter related to Kalpana Chawla. Number 3, you could give them an activity which provides them with lot of scaffolding. For example, give them an essay type or report type or article type exercise worksheet where you remove either all the adjectives or all the verbs or all the adverbs, which is all totally giving information only about the spacecraft or Kalpana Chawla or about an astronaut. Last but not the least, you could have a role play session at the end of the chapter where one student acts as a reporter and one student acts as Kalpana Chawla or an astronaut. A reporter asking questions to the astronaut about their space journey. You could even put some 4 to 5 questions on your whiteboard with your marker so that reporter knows what kind of questions to be asked.
Yeah.
On the other side of the board, put some important useful words and phrases which the astronaut, the student who is playing astronaut can use in their vocabulary so that they are not at loss of words while framing their answers. This would do 2 things. This would encourage your students to read more about astronauts, about Kalpana Chawla. They will find this chapter not boring but engaging because it is a non-fictional content. We need to create, like Raj said, some interest in that. So engage them in a project-like activity or give them such tasks so that they feel involved with the chapter. And the part where they have to do the exercise at the end of the chapter would go like this in a minute, because they know more than they should about Kalpana Chawla, about spacecraft, about life of astronaut, right? One interesting tidbit I just came to know from one of my medical friends is an astronaut who spends more than 6 months in the space ends up losing a lot of bone mass. That means when he or she comes back after 6 or 7 months, their height could be decreased by a couple of inches. Isn't it interesting? I mean, your student would find it very, very interesting and intriguing. So engage them with this kind of activities. You will end up increasing their knowledge, adding to their existing knowledge. You will finish your chapter in time. Not only that, you'll end up encouraging a lot of speaking among your students, and that's your goal.
So, this is another podcast, I think, but what I'm hearing from both of you is creating task-based inquiry, creating inquiry-based activities, task-based activities, and even project-based. And we can actually go deeper into these 3 design formats in another podcast later on, and look at how this can promote English in your classroom, right? So what Nipa just described is several tasks that lead to an inquiry. And when you start inquiring, the curiosity levels go up, intrinsic motivation, and the theory supports this, right? Very clear. There are lots of findings we know in classroom research that support this very simple equation. Engage, create inquiry, increase motivation. So to conclude, we will move on to a very brief sort of summary of what we talked about. If both of you could reflect on some of the key points, maybe 3 key points about promoting English in the classroom in the context of our Ladakh teachers' classrooms, but also the points we covered for English being our global language, for really creating yourself as a lifelong learner of English, and how you bring all these things to the classroom. So Rajlakshmi ji, please, over to you.
So, just before I say something, I just wanted to talk about this reading aspect. Sometimes when you just ask a student in class to stand up and read, he or she may hesitate, but don't show disappointment. That is one thing with the teachers. You must not, you must try and edge the student on, but in a very, very, subtle way. You have to be very careful about that, because once that inhibition sets in, it's very difficult to dislodge it. So that's one thing I always found in my students, especially in Botswana. As I said, really, you have to play such a crucial role in this, and a very careful role. You have to be very, very careful how you get to the student, so that you can you can get all that you want in the classroom to happen. You see, so yeah, I mean, so as I said, I mean, when we talk of the four skills, the reading, writing, speaking, and listening, the listening aspect is really, really very important, because here again, they naturally, it's a natural acquisition then, because when they listen, again and again to the same thing, then they get the skill of, the vocabulary increases, and they learn new things by listening. So listening is a very, very important aspect in the classroom. And along with that, of course, as we said, the reading and the writing bit, of course, and needless to say that about that. But again, here, situations, go into life situations if possible, take examples from the local environment, and then short trips here and there to engage them with students from other schools. I think these kind of things might, I mean, like when you go back to Ladakh, and you can introduce such measures, and let's see if there's any little progress. It will be a little slow, because, as I said, they are so used to, and it's a big step. They're the center of attraction when they're asked to speak something in class. So naturally, the child will be nervous. So it's the role that you play as a teacher and a mentor. You have to be a good mentor at that.
Yes. Create that supportive and safe environment in the classroom. So Nipa, to end our wonderful session, few summarizing ideas and thoughts that you would like to share.
Yes. So as we discussed, first and foremost thing is provide them with a purpose to use English in and out of the classroom. That's your duty as their teacher, number one. Number two, create such interesting and engaging tasks that not only lead towards completing and finishing your syllabus or intended chapter, but that lead towards increasing their knowledge, number one, and increasing their engagement and interest in the language, not in the subject. Please do not teach to test, but teach to increase their knowledge, to increase their interest. And third one, the activities always relate your lessons or end your lessons with a speaking activity. And you can have a variety of speaking activities, which we have already discussed during our modules, such as role plays, simulations, right? Discussions, debates, class presentations, right? Then reading out of the interesting item of news. Remember the news jar which I discussed with you, which I always do with my IELTS students. We have a news jar in the classroom, and everybody has to drop in one interesting item of news in that jar, and the most interesting piece of news would be awarded. The person who gives that most interesting piece of news will be awarded with a Kit Kat. Yeah, so it's a very small thing, but this generates a lot of speaking. Yeah, and in a way, the offshoot of the whole process is it actually promotes extensive reading. They have to read newspaper, they have to read online news, they have to read magazines to bring in the most interesting piece of news. So you could have variety of activities. Another one is describing pictures, finding the difference between the pictures, right? And then information gap activities, our all-time favorite. Yeah, do that and see the generation amount of language that is generated among your learners. And I cannot overemphasize the importance of doing all these activities in groups. Collaborative learning is the way to go, my friends. Do not please forget that. every task, every activity should involve either a group of students or at least a couple of students. Collaborative learning is something which will lessen your load also. We have discussed this in detail during our training sessions, so I'll not elaborate here. But these are the few important insights I think we got today from Raj Lakshmi ji. Thanks a lot, Raj, for being here. And we are not done yet. We still, would love to have you on our next podcast. Thanks a lot for being here.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's a pleasure to have both of you share such deep insights, and I'm sure that the RTT teachers will benefit greatly. And beyond RTT teachers, I think we all have, these are things that really bring us alive and make us think about our own practices every day, right? In different situations, in different contexts, at different age groups. So I thank both of you for your time. And yes, like Nipa said, here's to many more podcasts and conversations. And RTT teachers, please make sure you comment, you share your thoughts either on the Facebook group or right here on YouTube under the video, so that we understand how whether you like our conversations, whether you have any other ideas or thoughts, or whether you want to explore deeply certain specific things that we mentioned or other topics that are on your mind. So thank you.
Absolutely. So what exactly would you want from us next time? We would really like to see that in your comments. Yes. And let me thank you, Tarana, being the moderator and the anchor of all the podcasts and the conversations. Thanks a lot.
Always a pleasure. Thank you. And you're welcome, most welcome. And we'll see you in our next following episodes of the RTT podcast. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Raj.
Thank you, Nipa.